back it up a little bit. There we go. All right, guys. Pharaonic Access here. Today is day 4 of 1,000. I'll get into that later. But I wanted to touch on a current event. Christian Horner, Red Bull CEO, principal, basically master and commander, recently fired. Right? Red Bull called him into their office, conference room, whatever it was, and they told him that he was basically canned. He barely was able to plead for the night to collect his thoughts and then give an address to his whole company that he had grown over the course of 20 years. Now, I don't know every detail of this saga, and he got into some controversy last year for some untoward conduct with women, and it involved himself in some other sort of nefarious activities over the years. But regardless of any of that, what I see is a man who I respect, who built Red Bull Racing from essentially nothing into a titan over the course of his 20-year career, be fired without a second thought. And the media really doesn't understand the rationale behind it. The Race, which is a great YouTube channel that goes into this stuff, posted 3 videos very quickly. You can watch them. They meander around basically nothing because they don't know. Nobody really knows. And here's what I want to get to. Christian Horner, fantastic CEO at doing what he did very effectively, right? He ran not just Red Bull's racing division, but also had a big hand in their engine division, as well as many other aspects of their company, from what I understand, making it basically a powerhouse of bringing in investment dollars and deploying effective racing teams. That guy, I think, you could easily say is credible with building Red Bull to what it is today. And this is a perfect example of what I just went through, although I went through it on a much smaller scale, where I built my family's company over the course of 8 years with a lot of intensity and focus, and touched every aspect of that company, essentially built 99% of the systems, but I didn't own it. If you don't own it, like Christian didn't own Red Bull Racing, right? Red Bull, the soft drink company, owns it. Then you can be fired at any time. And this is what I think real builders really have to contemplate. And what I'm contemplating personally is, am I going to let myself grow more quickly under the hands of ownership from other people? Or am I going to be more disciplined and grow only what I can hold more slowly, but in a more focused context, and maintain control? And you see it a lot in Silicon Valley, right? They'll have Series A, angel investors, I guess then Series A, B, C, and slowly the initial founders get diluted into oblivion. And many times, as this is happening, those original founders are pushing themselves and running the company and continuing to put everything they can into the vision that they originally created, while the investors get most of the upside. And then here's the twist. Eventually, the investors kick out the founders. That's a very frequent outcome, because now they're kind of pesky. Now they're in the way of making the real money. You see this all over the place through various companies. I think it's one of the most common outcomes, because you have somebody who owns it emotionally, intellectually, and that threatens the on-paper ownership that other people have created. So what I learned in my company, which honestly is a much smaller, right? Christian Horner was towards the end of his career. This was a major arc for his entire life. As I go forward, I'm very conscious of not making that same mistake. That whatever I build, I own. And my father actually did a good job showing me the path here. He structured debt creatively, not always most prudently, but creatively, in order to avoid diluting ownership. And that was his real genius. Because once you have somebody in there who's essentially calling the shots, it gets much harder to grit your teeth and move through operational gray areas where there's a safe path and then there's a higher risk path. It gets much harder to reassure people when you're really not the end all decision maker. And at the end of the day, after all of that blood, sweat, and tears, you could just be left out to pasture like Christian was. And like I was in a smaller way, right? And I honestly thought, I was like, how could I be fired? Because I have all the files. I built everything. I designed everything. And that ethos, that very ethos, is what threatens incumbents. And if you or in your business or whatever you do secretly believe that despite the fact that you don't have ownership on paper, majority ownership, hopefully, on paper, that it's really still yours, that you own it, you're wrong. And it will be emotional whatever day that comes, that whatever you think you have gets ripped from you and you're left to rebuild from scratch. So don't make the mistake I made. Don't make the mistake Christian made. If you're 21 or 22 or 23, sure, go work for somebody, but start building your own thing on the side. That's why I'm doing this social media. That's why I'm building my own company on, not on the side, but actively. Now, Christian, I think, is going to be fine. He's a wealthy man at this point, and we'll see what happens to his F1 career. For the F1 fans out there, I'm curious to hear in the comments what you guys think he'll do next. As always, the Codex entries for this content will be posted on Substack and Medium, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.